Welcome to episode 8 of the Surviving Alzheimer's podcast. Today I'm going to talk about what it takes to coordinate and lead the care team of your loved one. I'll share with you things that I've learned along the way that will help you to be the best advocate for your loved one. Welcome to the Surviving Alzheimer's podcast. I'm your host, Ken Cardita. In this podcast, I share with you my experiences and learnings from the last 13 years as I've walked by the side of my dear wife Shanna as she progresses through Alzheimer's disease. It is my desire that you'll find joy and peace while learning to live with your loved one's disease, and not let the disease define you or your loved one. The Surviving Alzheimer's podcast is brought to you by Ascending Minds, LLC. As this year's football season has begun, I'd like to use the role of a football quarterback today in an analogy of how we play that role as a quarterback, as a primary caregiver, as we are at the center of all aspects of our loved ones' lives. Now, if you're not the primary decision maker in your loved one who has dementia, and play more of a supportive role, well, then consider yourself maybe to be one of the offensive linemen, protecting and helping out your quarterback. I will give an overview of the many aspects that the role that the quarterback of the caregiving team plays. I'll tell you a little bit about my experience assembling Team Shanna, and that team consists of medical professionals, financial and legal advisors, along with people who help me with emotional and spiritual support and act as a role of a coach and confidant for me. Including in this team are my many dear friends and family who have supported us along this journey. And last but surely not least are all the in-home and memory care caregivers and staff that have helped and continue to help my wife to this day. It has taken me years to assemble this team, but sometimes you have to scramble, as things quickly can change, and I will illustrate that in a story about a dear friend of mine and his wife. But before we get into this, I'd like to say thank you to Christine, who commented on last week's episode 7, regarding moderate Alzheimer's stage. She wrote this following comment on the Facebook page of the Surviving Alzheimer's podcast on that post. This is what Christine said. I quite enjoyed your honest perspective. Thank you for sharing your story and experiences. This will help so many. In fact, I'm recording an episode today. My father was just diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. I will definitely direct people to your show. Well, thank you, Christine. I did a little bit of digging and I found that Christine has a podcast called Heart-Led, Soul-Fed. And I listened to her episode, and what she did was she reviewed my last week's episode and used many of the talking points that I shared with the middle stage Alzheimer's. And she sometimes would explain what I had said, but then what was quite interesting was she gave her perspective of her experience with her dad and how these things related to her. So thanks, Christine, for the mention on your podcast, and I appreciate you spreading the word about our show here. All right, let's talk about assembling Team Shanna and how I have played the role of quarterback on that team. Well, the team consists of many medical professionals, and in previous episodes, I talked about some of the medical doctors that helped with Shanna's care. I talked about Dr. G and Dr. H. Well, unfortunately, after about a year or so of working with Dr. H, there was a change in his practice, and they no longer took our medical insurance. So I had to scramble to find a new doctor for Shanna. But very fortunately for us, Shanna was referred to the Banner Alzheimer's Institute in downtown Phoenix to potentially participate in clinical trials. So as I was searching for a new neurologist for Shanna, we got involved with Banner Alzheimer's Institute, or BAI, and they took her on not only for clinical trials, but also as a full-time patient at the clinic there. And that began a multi-year experience that is ongoing with Banner Alzheimer's Institute. At first, Shanna saw Dr. B, and then he eventually retired, and it was suggested that we see Dr. P. Now, Dr. P has been working with us for a couple of years now. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. P. She's awesome. The very first time we met with her, we spent 2 hours in her office, just me, her, and Shanna. And she really took the time to get to know Shanna and myself and our situation. And she saw Shanna pretty regularly for about a year, and then COVID hit. And then we had started doing video appointments during COVID. And Shanna's gotten to the point where she really can't respond. So I continue to meet with Dr. P on a quarterly basis, giving her updates to Shanna's condition and getting feedback and information, and working with her and getting her input on Shanna's care. Also at Banner Alzheimer's Institute, we were exposed to some of the social workers and a lot of the resources that they have. So the people at Banner's Alzheimer's Institute has really been a good part of our medical team over the years. Now, after moving Shanna into memory care, it became logistically difficult to have Dr. P be hands-on with all the prescriptions and things like that. So we turned that responsibility over to a nurse practitioner. I'll call her LK. She has been taking care of Shanna ever since she's been in memory care in both facilities. She happens to be contracted to each of the facilities that Shanna has been to, and she has been instrumental in playing a very hands-on, boots-on-the-ground role for Team Shanna. Her and I worked through some difficult challenges in getting Shanna's medications adjusted as Shanna's behaviors would change, in both consulting with Dr. P and our nurse practitioner. We worked to find the right mix of medications that have finally helped Shanna out. And that took, good couple of months getting through all that. I kind of played the role as the in-between quarterback, asking the questions, taking the advice from all the doctors, and then finally making some decisions in Shanna's behalf to how best to treat her with the different medications that are available. Now, from a finance and a legal standpoint, on the team, a set of lawyers who helped us take care of all the legal matters and get all that taken care of, and a tax consultant. So as far as dealing with finances, legal matters, and taxes, I have offloaded that. And as far as managing investments and money and things like that, I used to do that all myself. I've now handed that over to a professional, and I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. I allow them to do what they're good at, and then I can focus on my role as the quarterback of the team and not have to worry about running the ball all the time. So I let them run those balls for me. Now, as far as professional caregivers and memory care staff, I am very involved as the quarterback, supervising Shanna's care. In fact, if you were to talk to the people who run the memory care facilities that Shanna has stayed at, they all know me by name. They all know how dedicated I am to making sure Shanna gets the best care possible. The two facilities that Shanna has lived at are dramatically different. The first one was very large, kind of corporate run, had multiple levels of management and caregivers, as opposed to where she's at now, where it's owned by a couple, and there is basically an on-site manager and the care staff. I know each of the caregivers by name, know a little bit about their stories, their lives. They know quite a bit about Shanna. I've made it my business to inform them about a lot of Shanna's preferences and work with them to ensure that Shanna gets the best care possible. When Shanna was at her prior memory care facility, I had spent time talking to the director of the entire facility. I actually considered her a friend, as was the managing staff. I knew each one of them. I would take the time to get to know them, and that allowed me to work with them as best as possible. There became some tough times in that facility for Shanna, and I'll get into that detail later on, but I was able to work things out with them to Shanna's best interest, and that really helped. Now, as far as emotional support, spiritual support for myself on the team, I've got many friends, neighbors from church in my neighborhood, that have supported Shanna and myself all along. When all this started, you'll remember we moved into our current home, and that was difficult for both of us. We had to make a lot of new friends. A few people that I've met down here, I've come to trust and confide in. And in the last episode, I mentioned I have a mentor and a coach. She's a big part of the team. She helps me make sense and deal with a lot of the emotions and fears that come up as part of caregiving and allow me to deal with these fears and emotions in a healthy manner. We have a lot of family and friends who've really helped out and are part of our team. We have friends who've reached out to share their love and concern. Many of our friends have asked, well, what can we do for you? My response has always been, just keep being our friend. Keep visiting us. Keep hanging out with us. Let's not let this disease put any distance between us. And that has proven to be very, very important to us. Shanna has a few long-term friends that came to visit her while she was still at home, and a few even still visit her on a regular basis as best as they can in the memory care facility. I really appreciate what they've done. Shanna's sisters have been a great source of support over the years. They've come out to visit, spend time with me as I was caring for Shanna at home and give me a little bit of relief and take care of their baby sis. They send cards. We have numerous phone calls and are very supportive. And I very much appreciate how they've helped me to stay positive and to encourage me and help me keep connected with Shanna. Now, assembling this team has taken me years, and I make it a point as often as possible to express gratitude to all those members of the team, especially those who take care of Shanna each day at her memory care facility. I try and thank them each and every time I see them. I realize I've been blessed to have the right people show up just at the right time in our journey, and I thank my Heavenly Father for that. I'll share more of these details and tender mercies in future episodes. Now, let me tell you of a story of someone who is currently in the throes of assembling his team for his wife while dealing with some pretty serious threatening health issues of his own. I've been given permission by my friend and encouraged by him to share this story, as he calls it a public service announcement to the podcast listeners. First, let me tell you a little bit about our backstory. We met over 40 years ago in California. Shanna and I were married just for a couple of years. We met because we attended the same church, and as we got to know each other, we soon realized we had a mutual interest for progressive rock, otherwise known as prog rock. We became fast friends. I moonlighted for his business. At the time, he had a really cool business. He had a shop in Los Angeles that he repaired and hot rodded musical instruments for a lot of the very famous musicians that would come into LA and do concerts. He would eventually leave that business and started working at a local semiconductor company. A year or two later, he got me an interview there, and then we wound up working at that same company for the next 6 years. We had countless lunches together. We moved both of our families to a small town in Southern California that our company was building a factory that both he and I were pretty heavily involved with getting started up. After moving to that new town, he and I were in a band together for a few years during the late 1980s. Around 1990, we both relocated to different states, but we have kept in touch over the last 30 plus years. He's the kind of friend that you may not speak to for a year or so, but when you connect again, you just pick up right where you left off, like the time never elapsed. Now, for the last 5 years or so, he's been aware of what's been going on with Shanna and myself and what we were experiencing, and he's reached out and we've talked and sent emails, and he's even come to visit a couple times when he was in town for conferences and things like that. Now, about 5 months ago, he reached out to me, and we had a relatively long phone call. And he was telling me that he was starting to see some memory loss with his wife and her ability to remember some things. About A month ago, I sent a text to him about the podcast I was doing, and I thought it might be helpful to him. This led to a couple of phone calls, and he shared what was going on with his wife with me. And as we talked, I realized that what I had been experiencing with Shanna that took 2 or 3 years, he was seeing that level of change over the course of the last couple of weeks or a month. Very dramatic changes in just even a matter of days. And what ensued over that week or so were a few more phone calls and texts where he shared his experiences with his wife, and I would tell him what it was like for me and all the stress that came about being a full-time caregiver and kind of where he was at. Now, he also has the added responsibility of taking care of his adult child who has special needs. So he's taking care of both of his daughter and his wife. And his wife is in the middle of getting tested. They don't have a diagnosis for what she has. It's obvious it's some form of dementia, but he doesn't really know what it is. So they're trying to get all the various scans and things like that done. And it was in the middle of all this that we were having some pretty serious discussions on what might lie ahead once he gets a diagnosis. I talked a little bit about what it was like taking care of Shanna at home, and he's in the middle of all that. And I shared with him what led me to decide to move Shanna to memory care and how things went for us. In his mind, he had a few months before he had to really even consider that. Now, as this was going on, he took his wife to the ER. Things had gotten so bad. And they had one of those marathon days of 7 hours being in the ER together. She was finally admitted overnight with a really bad UTI that had turned into sepsis. So they were treating her for that. And all this was going on while he was also trying to get all these other tests done. He was quite stressed. I expressed my concern to him that I said that you're in the depth of caregiver burnout. And we talked about the statistics that go along with having a lot of caregiver burnout and how that could really affect the caregiver. He, at that time, he was saying, well, I keep getting these sharp pains. I feel like I have a knife in my back half the time. And it's been going on for a couple of days. So about a few weeks ago, he sends me a text and tells me that now he is in the emergency room and that those sharp pains he was experiencing for the last 10 days were a heart attack. He was experiencing a heart attack over the course of 10 days, and he was now in the hospital awaiting quintuple bypass open heart surgery sometime in the next 48 hours. When I read that text, I was taken aback. And then he was able to call me the next day, and we talked a little bit. And he told me this great story of how his adult children had stepped up. They were taking care of their mom. They realized how difficult it was for him and what he was doing. And they took it upon themselves to find a memory care facility where she could stay while he was going to get his surgery and then eventually recover from it. His recovery is going to take about 8 weeks. 3 of his adult children worked together to research, tour different facilities, and move their mom in the course of about 2 days so that she can be cared for and they could take care of their younger sister. Thankfully, the transition was smooth, and he was quite relieved to know that his wife was safe and well cared for. All this the day before he's about ready to have open heart surgery. His surgery lasted all day long, as I received a few updates from his son via text. We have texted and talked a few times in the week after him having his surgery. He also has had a chance to visit his wife at the respite facility, and it was a wonderful first visit with no issues. It was a very peaceful visit, and he was able to say goodbye, and it wasn't a big scene, and he feels he's been blessed for that. His wife is doing well and has adjusted to these changes over the last couple of weeks. In fact, as I am writing this episode, she is moving into another memory care facility that will most likely be where she will stay for the foreseeable future. In our conversations post his surgery, it has not been lost on both of us about the many tender mercies that God has provided him and his family over the last few weeks. Her accepting the move to memory care finding both a temporary and a permanent facility in just a matter of days. Him surviving a heart attack and having a successful open heart surgery. All the while his children stepping up to take care of mom, dad, and their sister. It has been very inspiring to both of us. Now, he wanted me to share this story to let you listeners know that being prepared and getting help and having a backup team in place allowed them to get through this very difficult time in their lives. He feels very blessed and fortunate to have had the support and help of family, friends, and professionals. As I have watched all of this unfold from a distance, I too am grateful for a loving Heavenly Father that assisted my dear friend and his wife and his family. I am grateful that his life was spared and that he's on the road not only to recovering from his open heart surgery, but recovering from caregiver burnout as well. I am grateful that he has the opportunity to continue to quarterback his team, and hopefully they can reach a diagnosis for his wife, and he can work with the memory care staff on how to best give the best care for his wife. This story illustrates that each of our journeys is definitely unique and that we cannot predict what the future holds, but that it is important for each of the caregivers to assemble their team and also to take care of themselves. Although he thought he had a few weeks and even months to consider finding a memory care facility, it all had to happen in a matter of days. All the time he was in the hospital. He really leaned on his faith in God and his family at the time of his greatest need. As I reflect over my experience quarterbacking Team Shanna, I've also realized that just like in football, a quarterback does not succeed all by themselves. He needs the rest of the team to do their part. He needs coaches to teach them. He needs to put his trust in others so they can do their job, and then you can be able to make quick decisions in the heat of the moment. For me, the hardest thing always has been accepting help. At first, people really wanted help and stay with Shanna, and I was somewhat hesitant. It took me a while, but I finally took them up on it, and I was grateful when they would come and spend just a few hours with Shanna while I can go have a little bit of respite and do some things that I needed to take care of around the house. I was also very late in getting in-home help. I should have done that a year earlier than I did. I was also in a little bit of denial about my own caregiver burnout. And because of that, that delayed and minimized my ability to be prepared for deciding about Shanna's moving into memory care. And this led to a very stressful 6-week time period where I had made the decision and had to find a place and get her all moved in. It would have been nicer to kind of stretch that out a little bit. Also, I waited far, far too long to get involved with local support groups. I should have started that years earlier. As I see some of the others who are in the support group, I see guys who are just in the very beginning say how valuable it is for us caregiving veterans sharing our stories and experiences. I could have used a lot of that advice earlier on. While none of these things were catastrophic for us, they did cause increased stress for me and did put me at a higher risk for my own caregiver burnout and the associated health issues that come along with that. And from my friend's story, we can learn the value of having a backup team in place available to step up when the need arises. Now, the purpose of this discussion is to cause you maybe to reflect on how you're doing in assembling and quarterbacking your caregiving team, and to let you know that you do not or should not try to do all of this on your own. Get help from wherever it is available. Find people to talk to about what you're dealing with and with the caregiving stress and the duties that you have. I have learned that the more I can talk about some of the hard things that we go through as caregivers, and I can trust them and share my burdens with them, they do become a little bit lighter in talking to them. And that also opens up opportunities for people to serve and help you. These are just some of the few things that have helped Shanna and myself to survive Alzheimer's. It is my hope that each day you strap on your caregiver helmet and quarterback your team, that you'll have the strength to finish the game. I would like you to share with myself and the other listeners of the podcast how you have assembled your team and what experiences you've had in leading them. The best way to do this is to go on the Surviving Alzheimer's Podcast Facebook page and leave a comment. Now, on our next episode, we'll go back to and resume our backstory. I'll talk about what it was like to deal with severe Alzheimer's, and I'll focus on the time that I was still at home with Shanna and we were taking care of her, leading up to my decision to move her to memory care. Well, thanks for listening. And of course, as always, I appreciate your time. I hope you have a good day. And please subscribe to the Surviving Alzheimer's Podcast so you can be notified of episodes as they're published. I wish you luck in your quarterbacking your team, and I hope that you can find the help that you need. And remember, just take it one day at a time. Thanks for watching an episode of the Surviving Alzheimer's Podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I recommend that you watch the first 13 episodes in order. That way you can learn about our backstory. This will make understanding later episodes much easier. To help you with this, I've created a playlist. It's called Surviving Alzheimer's Podcast in Order. That way you can listen to all the episodes in the order that they were created. The mission of the Surviving Alzheimer's Podcast is to educate and inspire caregivers, family, and friends who are on their own unique journey down Dementia Road with their loved one. I would really appreciate it if you could share this episode to anyone who you feel would benefit from it. Additional ways for you to help us reach others are to hit the like button for this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to be notified of new episodes. All of these actions will encourage the YouTube algorithm to share this episode and podcast to other potential viewers.